Hey everyone, Drew here, and it is time for a new data-based Evertale tier list. As always, over 100 top teams from around the world have been considered for this, and the calculated true power decides the tier in the end. So let's get right started with the newly released units. And first we see Angel Rizette here, the second Dark Rizette, this kind of mega poison unit that kind of has a really strong skill set, especially considering that it is poison. However, that's already a problem right there, that it is poison. Poison is just quite far removed from the meta right now, and Angel Rizette unfortunately didn't quite do enough to reinvigorate the kind of poison units. On her own, she's quite a decent unit, but she doesn't really help her poison teammates to flourish. On top of all that, her survivability isn't all that great. Revenge skills often do get ignored, and even if she gets to revive another time, then she will be placed in a random position in the reinforcements, which could potentially screw up your team build. That might be the main reasons why she is only going to B tier. This is something that even surprised me a bit. I think she is a bit undervalued there in the B tier, but only 12% of the top teams have been using her when I collected all the data, and not in prominent positions. So it is what it is. However, I will still say that kind of instant mega poison, if it gets a lucky hit and she can immediately do poison carnage or whatever, it is still a sight to behold. But it might just be a bit too RNG. Next up we have Ludmilla&Clarice, this kind of dual water sleep unit that is very, very strong. She becomes a guardian after getting a kill and unlocks a very, very strong skill with a kill as well. She has that kind of instant nightmare, but more on that later because she is going to one of the top tiers, so we will talk about her then. Then we also see Giga Rolotia, the new Storm Rolotia 2.0. She hasn't been around long enough to have sufficient data to tier her, but first results seem to be promising with that kind of chrono chaos that she brings to the battlefield. She might be an S tier candidate for the next tier list. The new Bright Snow Whites are also not here yet, but if you want more info about them, you can always watch my review of them in the meantime. And now we go to the tier changes, and first we see Dark Colin join the Graveyard tier. She was always in a kind of difficult spot, being released between two of the top units in 2021, between Dark Jeanne and Storm Elmina, and being a poison unit doesn't make things any easier for her. Even though she was one of the, or rather I think the first unit that actually could deal some significant damage and also poison an enemy at the same time with the poison burst that she brought into the game. And then we also see Theo joined the G tier, which means unfortunately he didn't even last 1 year above that, and there are no more male units in the tiers above. His healing pulse could always be kind of annoying to deal with, but ever since the resurgence of burn units, I think his destiny was kind of sealed as this kind of earth support guard. Moving on to F tier, and we see Fire Colin join that tier. There is just much better Purify heals around these days, and of course her Crisis skill set also isn't exactly suitable for the meta right now. The survival armor was great, but it's just not enough to keep her relevant. You also see Earth Ludmilla join the F tier, and she has that kind of gift turn plus, which was a unique feature. But now we do have instant skills in newer units already. And honestly, generally, I was never really a big fan of her, I don't think. Even at her release, she was doing that great as a last stand unit. Some more positive news into the opposite direction. We see Artimaya rise again to the E tier, which I do like to see. Great off-banner unit with that kind of stun and spirit entry. And because her skill set is really fully focused on support, one copy of her can already do a lot of good. And also the AI cannot screw up massively with her, I feel. Although sometimes she does do a Pain Spirit instead of a Purify, when the Purify would potentially save another unit on your team. But nevertheless, E tier for her with 4% usage. And it's also E tier for Bunny Rizette, who is falling a bit, and that might be explained because now we have another forced sleep unit in the house with Ludmilla and Clarice, and of course Sleeping Beauty and the Cursed Sleep already applies some sleep that doesn't care about whether an enemy unit has already slept or not. Down as well is Fire Antares. Though she is a fan favorite in terms of arts, she was never really all that relevant in the meta, and even Commander Astrid's release didn't lead to a permanent boost for her. The consensus is just that there are better fire units, or rather burn units, around than Fire Antares. Looking at D tier, we actually see a 2023 units fall into the D tier, and that is Cinderella. Remarkably only 7% usage even after her second banner. She was definitely an arena flop on the matured servers. On newer servers and in war she can still do some good stuff potentially, but I still think that Sixer kind of screwed her up by putting the probabilities of her replication just a bit too low, maybe in fear of making her too strong, but now the opposite is the case. She's just not good enough to leave a big impact on your arena success. All that being said, you can still argue that D tier is undervaluing her a bit. The Dark Blessing is a great skill, and if she pops off, she could be quite annoying to deal with. None other than the light unit Sakura took the opposite route. Compared to Cinderella, she's going from D to C tier, and honestly this might just be an effect of her kind of auto purification passive that she has going on that could become more relevant. On the one hand with burn around just a little bit, but more importantly with sleep, with that kind of cursed sleep, and with the Ludmilla and Clarice release. All that might have helped Sakura a little bit to gain some true power and rise into the C tier. The same cannot be said for Apollo and Artemis, another 2023 unit that is falling down. They are now in the C tier. This kind of permanently burning stealth unit is down to 7% usage, and it seems like, similar to someone like Fire Antares, she's just not a top 5 burn unit and thus cannot benefit much from the Commander Astrid burn push. She is a good unit overall, but especially with the stealth nerfs from the recent months, she just doesn't, or they just don't shine enough. On the other hand, Momoka, this water sleep temporary guard support unit, is actually going to the B tier. I'm not quite sure why that is, to be honest. Ludmilla and Clarice might have something to do with it. Momoka is also generally good against burn units, and stun and storm being pushed back more and more does help her to stay relevant. So that is my explanation for the 17% usage that gives her the B tier. Speaking of falling storm units, we see Storm Antares go down to B tier by now, and also she is being followed by Storm Ludmilla. Both of these units have that kind of Stun Heart or Thunder Heart skill to regain 100% of HP, but with the rise of stun immunities and also the rise of burn and multi-attack units, their hold ground doesn't hold up that well anymore, and the stuns are less effective. Also, both of their hate is fairly high. Storm Ludmilla also kind of needs stun to be strong because her command and combo skill really shines when she can give turn to a highly stunned unit, for example like a light Anya, which was what we usually saw in February. Both of them lost about 1 million true power compared to the previous month. Gavine, on the other hand, can be happy about a true power gain. With 30% usage, she is now going into the A tier, and she might be part of the solution countering meta burn plats, but also she has that kind of solid skill set with Hold Ground Plus, and yeah, just the very fast attack right at the start. Her hold ground plus reset is very conditional, but still possible with another kill, and her AI seems to be doing alright these days. Also going to the A tier is Haku, who is now, I think, technically the highest tiered support unit, but still only A tier, and that is because support units are just not all that relevant right now in the meta. I think that DPS and guards are just becoming more and more self-sustaining. Nevertheless, Haku, with these fast heals, these fast gift turns, and the potential to be back on the battlefield again with the kind of rising hate that she gets when she unlocks the Survivor's Wrath, there is a chance that the revenge might not be ignored and she gets to support your team again at the end of the battle. And now for something tragic, we actually see two Elminas fall from the S to the A tier. We see Storm Elmina go down to A tier, this previous number 1 unit at this point hugely struggling, and I think 64% usage is still very nice to her, mostly kind of carried by legacy. I think her low hate is just not enough anymore in the current meta. And of course units like Cinderella, Storm Jeanne, Sleeping Beauty, Commander Astrid are all kind of death sentences for her. So that is why, more surprisingly maybe, is that Fire Elmina is actually down to A tier. I didn't expect that. She did lose quite a significant amount of true power here and is now at 45% usage. Still very much the top pick for the 5th position in the arena, with the burn stun entry, with the ignition rage heal, with the kind of burning or healing burn drive. A lot of good stuff going on when she is in a burn team, and especially if she is facing someone like Sleeping Beauty, she can basically disable her. But this might just be a first impact of Ludmilla and Clarice being released. On the other hand, another water unit is rising, and that is Water Callan this time. Interestingly so, I mean, she is at 65% usage again, and the kind of disruptor feature is something that can still be of a lot of value, and also kind of that spirit loot, kind of passive spirit income as long as you kill your enemies. It still seems to be enough. Arguably a very respectable performance here by Water Callan. Maybe also important is that with that kind of imposter feature that she has, she also helps not only herself but other units to unlock their savage skill, and nobody, I think, has a more potent savage skill set than the recently released units, especially Ludmilla and Clarice from these. Before we go to the top tiers, we do have another sad event. Even though she is still at 83% usage, Earth Mysha is no longer part of the two top tiers. She falls to the S tier. Still massively impressive performance considering her age, but still she was kind of the dominating unit pretty much the entire year of 2022, and now halfway through 2023 she is really falling hard. Why is that? We see stealth being nerfed, burn rising, which absolutely is a problem for her. We see a cursed sleep mechanic being released, which is something her stealth attacks cannot ignore. So these are all reasons for her to fall a bit. All that being said, she's still a very, very good unit. That kind of stealthy vengeance, still a great skill, especially in times of cursed sleep and burn. This can help her survive quite often. And now we will be looking towards the 8 units in the absolute top tiers. And joining first is Ludmilla and Clarice, the new dual sleep water unit. As discussed before, super briefly, that kind of instant nightmare skill is an absolute nightmare for the opponents. She can force sleep on opponents if there is no sleeping opponent around that she can potentially kill. And if she kills an opponent, she automatically becomes a 100% guard, and if she as a 100% guard dies, she will just recover all her HP and become a normal unit again. And something that I haven't really commented on yet, that is a huge feature for her, especially in the current meta, is her evasive stance. Basically, You could see it as a permanent stealth status that isn't stealth. She ignores all attacks that deal damage to exactly 2 targets, although the stealth comparison isn't quite right because, of course, she can be attacked by attack all moves, which is also not true for many. But yeah, basically when you put her behind a guard, you can hardly touch her except with stuns, and stuns are her big weakness. Of course, when she becomes a guard, then at least the evasive stance is out, otherwise she would be completely overpowered. And another really nice feature about her is that she can kind of be a nerf to hold ground plus units, because on the one hand, of course, she has a nightmare skill, so even if she puts her targets to 1 HP and they have hold ground plus, they don't just wake up and get a chance to regain their HP at the next turn. But also things like her knockout strike, which are specifically putting targets to sleep that go under a certain HP threshold. That kind of savage knockout can really hurt a lot of enemy units that are highly regarded in the meta right now. So let's see where she goes from here. Right now at 47% usage, but still relatively freshly released, of course. Still holding on to the SS tier on the other hand is Lancelot, losing quite some true power, but still 83% usage. And Lancelot, interestingly, is a unit that can be a good counter to Ludmilla and Clarice once they are no longer behind guards. That being said, it is much harder nowadays for Lancelot to get the deadly momentum going, to land some good stuns and royal swift slashes. There's just more and more stun immune units around, there's more hold ground pluses that keep units alive. And also the TU just get shorter and shorter and shorter, so going above 100 ton units isn't that common anymore for many of these units. Most importantly, someone like Commander Astrid, who is permanently stun immune, and we talked about her a lot already in previous editions. She single-handedly made burn relevant again. An amazing starter unit, and that is also partially why we see her in SS tier, even though she only has 55% usage, but her impact is just that big. The 1 TU instant skill with the guard incinerator is a nice plus. She can produce so much spirit, given that usually there's a lot of burn going on around her. With the burning spirit skill, ignite all plus makes her team very fast and also hopefully keeps the burn alive. And on top of all that, of course, she has the burning armor, burning heart, and I think burning blaze, which is this targeted 2 skill that is insanely strong. All that being said, Ludmilla and Clarice is a pretty strong counter against her, so let's see how things evolve in the future. And also Commander Astrid, of course, only really shines when she is at least together with some burn units, and that is just holding her back on some servers, which despite her insanely strong skill set just doesn't make her a universally oppressive force to be reckoned with. Another unit that has an insanely strong skill set is Sleeping Beauty. This Earth unit introduced the cursed sleep mechanic, and all of her skill set is basically insane. She has that kind of Dream Devourer that can steal spirit from the enemy. She heals her team, she sometimes guards her team, she puts so many enemies to sleep. But the one big but, of course, is her massive burn weakness. Against burn teams, she completely falls flat. She dies very quickly, or rather actually helps the burn team when she uses the cursed sleep strike and distributes the burn status on herself to the whole enemy team. Her thorns completely lose their effect, and that is why, even though she has such an insanely strong skill set, it is not enough for the SSS tier right now. But still, 78% usage, and if you run her without any burn going around on the battlefield, possibly one of the best units, or maybe the best unit in the entire game. Another staple unit after all these years. Now it's pretty much 2 years since she was released, and it is Bright Ludmilla that is still holding on to the SS tier, still at 99% usage and still indestructible if she gets her Shield of Eldine down. Her only recent problem is, of course, the armor that she puts on her team being actually of help to an enemy Cinderella. But on the other hand, as long as burn still poses a significant threat, I don't see her falling at all. And I mean, 100% guards, as you know if you've been following my tier list, have an insane longevity. The same might just be true for Light Anya. This 100% guard goes to the SSS tier, 85% usage. Initially the crowd was a bit unconvinced by her, given that she could be stunned into oblivion, but stun is not that relevant anymore and her skill set truly shines now. Instant gives turns, these initial 75% heals when she gets attacked. Very easy for her to re-unlock Endure as well. So yeah, a lot of things going in her favor and the best guard in the entire game right now. Also joining the SSS tier again, of course, is Storm Jeanne as number 2. She has 100% usage after her second banner and is the first unit in a very long time that can overtake Bright Ludmilla in that statistic. Why is that? She is really that kind of great mix of DPS, support and guard unit. Storm Michaela constantly being resummoned as this kind of 100% guard for nearly 100 time units that is invincible. Very easy to revive Storm Jeanne as well, reusing some of the entry effects of other units. If she does get off the Survivor's Judgment, then it is still a very strong skill, though keep in mind that her heat is very high, but it can help her as well. I mean, she has the Endure status effect that kind of heal when she gets hit, the healing rage on top of all that, so it is quite a challenge to actually kill Storm Jeanne, and if she gets killed then she might just be immediately revived by Storm Michaela, and then what she technically did was waste the enemy team's time. The only slight downside is that her survivor timer resets, but even if that's the case, she can still stun the opponents, possibly help Storm Michaela get a time drain rate. And briefly speaking about Storm Michaela again, her Purify heal can oftentimes save some of your other units as well. So yeah, a lot of reasons why she reaches 100% usage, basically being represented in every single top team. But the number 1 spot is reserved for another unit, a newer unit, and this is Light Cinderella, just 86% usage, but she was out not that long and is already an absolute staple in Platoon 1s, where she has given a big impact. She can be basically used everywhere in each team. It doesn't really matter. She can run with burn on the side, she can run with sleep on the side, she can run with poison, blood. It doesn't really matter. Of course, it's nice if you run her with sleep, then you can possibly be benefiting from her Hypnoblast, putting some enemies to sleep. But even if not, even if it's in a burn team, she is basically a hedge against meeting different teams. Hypnoblast extremely fast and also extremely strong on every second strike. And then on the other hand, of course, as soon as she unlocks the Survivor's Storm, insane damage output, 1 TU. The conditions are so low for this and it's only locked for 50 time units, so she can constantly switch between these two. She has 2 other skills that kind of secure her survival in conjunction with the Hold Ground Plus. Also, each Survivor Storms unlocks her Endure effect as well. She has a 1000% damage skill. She can potentially banish an opponent while flipping her HP. Right now, she is pretty much the complete package. Her main counters are probably Sleeping Beauty and now Ludmilla and Clarice, but especially Sleeping Beauty can be dealt with if Cinderella runs with a burn team. But yeah, as long as we don't see another big unit release or meta shift, right now it is really easy to recommend Cinderella as the best SSR in the game overall, regardless of what team you run. So there you have it, the new Evertale Arena tier list, taking data from the top teams, from the Americas, from Europe, from Asia, which does take me many hours to compile. So if you wanna support me, leave a like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it a lot. Let me know if you have any thoughts about the tiers in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.